commercial-free Catholic charismatic channel.
He's strengthening the faith of so many people.
To promote the gift of church teaching, dedicated for the new evangelization.
God's blessings on your work. May God bless and prosper you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.
First of all, there were two young ladies that went to Walmart to buy me a harmonica. Are they here? Were you successful? Maybe they're going to come in the last second. So if I see them, I promise I'd bust a blues riff for y'all if I had a chance. But let me see here. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. So my name's Father Nathan. Like he said, I'm very happy to be with everybody. He wanted to read that long introduction. I said, if you want to read the long introduction, go ahead. But those things are deceiving because we write our own, you know. So it's like, who am I? Well, I've done this, and, you know, and basically I'm trying to convince you to come to the talk, you know. So I hate that. I want to be upfront with you about this. The reason I'm here, I'm not here to promote anything. Okay, so I actually took time out of my schedule to do this conference as a service to the good folks of Bismarck because I wanted to. I work at the new evangelization and I put my whole heart and soul into it. And as I do that work, I continually come up to the same problem over and over again. And usually when I go to a conference to preach or do a retreat, they give me a subject or whatever. And this time they asked me, what do you want to talk about? So I said, oh, praise the Lord, you know. Let's do something that these folks probably haven't heard a talk about and probably won't hear a talk about for them. Because we could talk about the Virgin Mary and the Eucharist, Christ on the cross. We could do those things which are absolutely magnificent. We need to talk about them. But when was the last time that you took on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 the chance to sit down and reflect on moral relativism? I was like, well, that's what I'd like to do with you. So that you get to know me a little bit. My name's Father Nathan. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. Very proud of that. I never meet anybody else from Toledo, Ohio. I travel all over the place. They're like, where are you from? Like, Toledo. They're like, so then I say, Corporal Klinger, MASH, the weird guy from Toledo. That's right. Then it starts to click for them. I love my hometown. I love where I'm from. I joined the Brothers of St. John. So my religious community, the guys in gray, right? It's a little joke there for you. We live in the hood. We call it a habit because it's hard to break. You know, I mean, you just have so many jokes, you don't know what to do with them all. I joined the Brothers of St. John when I was 22 years old after teaching high school for a year after graduating from college. And I've lived in Illinois, then I studied in France for 5 years. So, si quelqu'un ici est français, je vous salue, personne comme j'ai pensé. And then I went from France back, and now I'm the prior in Laredo, Texas, South Texas. I'm right on the border with that's right. God bless Texas. Don't mess with Texas. They have that on all their trash cans. Don't mess with Texas. You're like, okay, you know, I'm gonna throw things away. That's about me. Anyway, what do I love to do? I love to evangelize. I love to spread the gospel. And I'm continually stymied by this same problem. And I want to just jump right into it with y'all because, I picked that up. A true story about that. Why I picked that up is because I was in front of a convent full of cloistered nuns. And I was like, you guys need to pray for me, you know? And the sister was like, we're not guys. And I realized the wisdom of the Texans. So I picked up y'all. I want to reflect with y'all about this because when it comes down to it, we are living a moment in American history, well, you could say which is unique because every moment is, but we've never been at this point before. We've never lived the lifestyle like we're living. No one in the history of the world has ever lived this before. You actually have more information in your pocket, right, than Aristotle had at his disposition, or St. Thomas Aquinas, or King Henry VIII, or anyone for that matter. You have almost the entire Library of Congress right in your pocket if you wanted to. You've got this search engine called Google. You could type in everything that you want and it's instantly there. We live in a generation of answers, but we don't live in a generation of questions. And that's a problem because it mutes our intelligence. And when an intelligence is muted, it becomes malleable. And when an intelligence becomes malleable, it becomes controllable. And I want to challenge you, because I'm one of you, as a fellow American, a fellow first world liver, that we need to start to reflect about the deep questions in life, or else we might be overcome by them. You have the answers in your hand. Why don't you have the questions? Whatever happened to the passion for life? The enterprise. You know, when you go back and you read the Founding Fathers documents, or you read you listen to a speech by Churchill, for crying out loud. He's only 60 years ago. Listen to what Churchill how he speaks. It's amazing. He's almost like, what we're trying to do together is build something. Are we trying to build? Are you trying to build? Or are we just riding? The reason I'm saying that is because you cannot build a civilization, nor can you build a society, nor can you build a family without principle. Principles are given. They're facts. They're things that allow us to move forward. It's like a staircase. I can step up and I can step down because there's something solid to step on. I've never done this before. That's pretty good. There's something solid to step on. I'm not, well, I don't know if there's anything. I mean, there might be something. We'll just kind of jump, you know. It's like saying, like, you know, live life, just jump. I mean, maybe you'll do it right. If we stand around you and say that you're doing it right, then you're going to do it right. And we're, you know, and then we're just like sitting there going like, yeah, and people died at Normandy, and people died, you know, at the American Revolution, young men left their families and just like died for nothing because, maybe there's nothing. Like, I really don't know why I live. Well, if I don't know why I live, then I don't know how to govern my family. I mean, governing a family, like, that requires like that there be a point to governing. But like, what is the point? You know, honey, I really don't know why we're married, you know? And she's like, yeah, let's not even get married. Oh yeah, that's great. We'll just live together without getting married, because what does marriage add? You know, we love each other. We're talking. We share Cheerios. I mean, you know, I don't know. You take care of the kid, I'll take care of the kid. What is marriage after all? Yeah, what is marriage? It's a social convention. That's another way of saying it's meaningless. Okay, well, if marriage is meaningless, well, then what about a relationship? Where is it going to stop? When are you going to stop and say, well, where does meaning begin? Where is it that when I put my foot forward, I stop on something, where my mind says, you know what, this is. A relationship should be about love. Well, yes and no. It kind of depends on who you read. There's a lot of people that says, and what is love? And they say, love? Well, love is a pleasure, right? So a relationship's really about pleasure. And heck, I could have the same pleasure with someone else. As a matter of fact, well, that's right. Then let's have an open relationship. Yeah, that's a great idea. That means basically I'll get pleasure from you when I want. I'll get pleasure from someone else when I want. And we'll both do that, and then we'll talk about it, and it's just marvelous. And then you could take another step and say, well, what is pleasure? Is there a limit to your pleasure? What is the limit to life? Saying that something is an affirmative statement that enables me to move forward, because when I say that it is, I also imply that it is not something else. And that statement, this is, allows me to build. It allows me to go forward. This is a podium. This is a stage. I am a human being. Is there a difference between a man and a gorilla? Well, it depends. You know, I mean, if you can't tell the difference between Wall-E and a walrus, you know you got problems. But there's a lot of people that say there is no difference. Wall-E is just an evolved walrus. He's just slime that's made it a little bit further up the ladder. Well, all right, then that means I can do with Wall-E what I can do with slime. Do you have any objections? Is Wall-E simply evolved slime? If he is, he's a slime bag. Yeah, it's where you're like, well, no, I mean, there's a difference. We need to what? Now you're talking ethics. Ethics is based on facts. Ethics is based on facts. Historically, the problem that we're having of saying that there is no such thing as moral truth, that there is no affirmation that you can make absolutely, is based on not a question of ethics, but of the mind. The philosophers began by saying, I don't know if I can be sure that I can speak about anything other than what's right in front of me. And since questions like God, truth, right and wrong aren't things that I can touch and taste and see and smell, I can't be sure that they exist. And if I can't be sure that they exist, I can't talk about them with certitude. Right? So therefore, I'm going to focus myself only on what's right in front of me, what I can measure. Right? And so what does that leave us with? Well, that leaves us with, culturally, a huge void. I mean, think about what you'd actually say. Moral relativism sounds very convincing. It sounds wonderful. My kid comes home, he's so smart, and he's like, Mom, how do you really know what love is? And you're like, I don't know. You start crying. He's like, that's right. Nobody knows. And then you're just like completely like, I just let my arms down and I'm just like a little sheep. Because who is to say what love is? You're right. And so we always go back to like mom's salvation, which is the Bible. And the child just yawns. The Bible, right? Well, that's for you guys who don't know any better. I really want to stop for a second. What we did right there, philosophically, is we separated something that I can see from something that I can't see. We said, in other words, I'm going to focus only on what I can measure, what I can see, what I can taste, what I can smell. I will not, therefore, focus on anything that I cannot measure in order to be absolutely sure about what I'm saying. But once you've done that, is that valid? Is it valid for someone to say, I don't know what podium is, I just know that this is wood? Because I would put you back and say, how do you know what wood is? What type of wood is the wood you want? And you go spinning in circles because you can keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until you find out actually there is no starting point. The only way out of this, you guys, is for us to stop and say, I am able to say something. And what I say is true. And what you need to do is, instead of silencing me and muting me and telling me that I don't have the right to speak, you need to listen to me and talk with me. The moral relativism leads to silence, and silence leads to abuse. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world, said Thomas Jefferson, is for good men to do nothing. I believe that. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is for good men to do nothing. How do I make a good man not do anything? I convince him that he has nothing to say to me, that he's good in his corner. But the repercussions that has on a culture are astounding, astounding. How do you get to a spot where pornography is not just seen as not even bad, but as good? How do you get to a spot where schools are introducing programs to actually undermine the innocence of children? Read what Planned Parenthood actually proposes for educational objectives starting in kindergarten. I think you'll all be astounded by what you read. And yet that plan has been given over to schools as the official recommendation for sexual education. Read about it, but you'd be astounded at the goals of what we're supposed to be inculcating. Well, who's to say that that's wrong? Okay, that's where I'm going to get to. I want to first say, though, that that's pretty astounding when you can't say that something's wrong. Is there anything that's wrong? You know, when you talk to a moral relativist, ask them, okay, the world that you're going to build, which has no rights or wrongs, or no one's really able to say, what does it look like? Who does say when the taxes start? Who does say when you pull the plug on grandma? Who does say who gets health coverage and who doesn't? Somebody's got to. Well, the realism is, who is saying it? To say that nobody can say is naive. Someone will always say. The question is whether or not what they say is right, see? But now suddenly there's a contender in the ring. Now suddenly I can stand and say, wait a second. We need to talk about this. You don't have the right to mute me just because you claim to say the only thing you can know is what you can measure. I say that my measurements allow me to know much more than what they measure. The spiritual and the physical are one. The intelligible and the sensible are one, if you're a philosopher. This is a podium. That's a staircase. And that, my friend, is wrong. Now, I want to share with you a quote from the first slide, if I could. This is from Pope John Paul II. And it looks so small we can't even read it. So I'll read it for you. That's so much for that. You know, this is the first time I've ever used PowerPoint in my entire life. And it's a flop. Yeah, praise the Lord. It's my first slide. I'm not used to it. I like whiteboards because it's a lot more alive. But anyway, this is from Veritatis Splendor by John Paul II, 1993. He says, de-Christianization, which is what we're living now, right? A bunch of Christians who don't know Christ. De-Christianization. I was baptized. I have no idea why, right? Which weighs heavily upon entire peoples and communities once rich in faith and Christian life, involves not only the loss of faith, or in any event, it's becoming irrelevant for everyday life, right? Marriage, well, whatever, you know. But also, and of necessity, a decline or obscuring of the moral sense. Not only will a country that's de-Christianized throw out Christ, but it will also lose its ability to say what is right and what is wrong. That's not me, that's the Pope. Now, I think what's interesting here is you can't say that absolutely. Man's able to always say what's right and wrong. He's always able to think. But he's saying, like, at the same time, practically put, when we throw out God as the foundation for our thought and we say the buck does stop somewhere, it stops with God. God made us, and therefore there's sense to what we're living. Throw that out. And he says, well, you'll end up with saying, we don't know what we're living. Is it okay to kill a child? Well, it's not a child in the womb. It's not a child. Well, then later on we say, well, actually, it is a child. What we're going to say, but it's still okay. Because someone has the right while the child's inside, because of privacy, to do what they want with their body. And we start justifying. And you're like, well, wait a second. We are justifying killing a child. Let's call it like it is. Why do you need to justify it? Keep on going. This comes about both as a result of the loss of awareness of the originality of gospel morality, Christianity, and as a result of an eclipse of fundamental principles and ethical values themselves. We lose our moral sense because we've lost the sense of principle. Do the next slide here. Today's widespread tendencies towards subjectivism. That means I make the decision of what's right or wrong myself. I'm the subject. I've got to make a decision. It's going to be right because it's coming from me. Utilitarianism, well, that's a little bit, different. That person there says, well, let's see what's going to help most people the most. This is really where we live mostly because we're like good people. So we want people to be happy. So we're like, well, is there anything that's like absolute? Well, no. Whatever can serve the greater economy, which gives more schools, So we might have to mitigate a couple rights here or there, but what we're going to end up with is happy people. So it's kind of like the song, Shiny Happy People Holding Hands. That's kind of the goal we're going after, right? Subjectivism, utilitarianism, or relativism, which means, hey, it all depends on the culture that you live in, appear not merely as pragmatic attitude or patterns of behavior, but rather as approaches having a basis in theory and claiming full cultural and social legitimacy. In other words, John Paul II is saying, we have a situation here that's unique. It's one thing for you to create a culture or political value that's intent on destroying things. Okay, at least you're standing for something. But when a culture says it stands for nothing, and that's the only thing that you can stand for, you're betraying your very humanity. It's not even an attack on God. This later on in Veritatis Splendor, he says that. He says it's not even just an attack on God. It's an attack on man. Because when you take out the ability to lay claim to truth and to say, I'm going to build my life on what is true, you take out the strength of the human experience. Young people know this spontaneously. It's my joy to work with so many. I'm so glad there's so many of you here. I'm not the only one that way. It's so wonderful because when you work with young people, you see that. There's look, what's it all about? The number of young people that come to me feeling like there's no point to their life would surprise most people. Because you're like, how could a young people be bored with love? I know young people that have given themselves completely to their sexual excesses and are bored with it. I'm like, well, I mean, if you got bored with that, my friend, like, I really don't know what to tell you. I mean, how could you get bored with that? There are people that live together in sexual intimacy for 50, 60 years, and they're still not bored of it. And you're bored of it after 2? It's like, well, maybe the problem is you're doing it the wrong way, right? Maybe there's something deeper to love. But if you live in a culture like we live in, where marriage is seen as meaningless and children are seen as an obstacle, you're left with your own gratification as the highest standard of your life. That's a weak ethics. I'm not gonna die for my own gratification, and I'm certainly not gonna die for yours. But if I'm not gonna die for yours or mine, what am I living for? Precisely the point. I wanna say that there's hope, young people. The hope is for us to purify our mind from all the negativity that we imbue on a regular basis in our culture that says that you cannot know why you live. You can know why you live. You live because God Himself has made you for life. And your destiny is with Him. And He proved it by sending His Son to die so that you could live. Don't throw that away because some atheist comes along saying that he thinks that you're a slime bag. You can believe him and be a slime bag if you want, but you could also believe that you're the image and likeness of Almighty God, and both stand. Next slide. I'm going to give what I find here 4 simple steps to winning the argument with your grandson. I love grandmas as I love my own. Grandmas are just the most amazing thing. And grandmas have this instinct that something ain't right in this perspective here. You know, you're like, stop hitting my brother, and the little kid, or stop hitting your brother. The little kid turns to you and says, who are you to say stop hitting my brother? You're imposing morality upon me. Can you imagine that? I think grandma would be like, you're darn right I am. I impose a lot of other things upon you at the same time, You just can't do that. Well, then when you turn to when you're 18 and you're like, I want to stay out till 3 in the morning and sleep with my girlfriend and then sneak in through the window, and grandma says, you can't do that, why would you sit there and say, grandma's imposing her morality upon me? I'm like, maybe she should have imposed a little bit harder when you were little. 4 simple steps to winning the argument. And they're so simple that you're all going to go to sleep. But that's like part of the intrigue here. It's like, is it really that simple? It really is. Don't let atheists bully you, you guys. You have every right to stand on your 2 feet. Christianity built a culture which built the United States of America. We have nothing to be ashamed of in our intellectual heritage. Independent of all you want to talk about salvation, the truth of the vision of man that you find in Christianity is worth fighting for. And it ain't dumb. I'm going to show you just how simple it is. Step 1. I can tell the difference when something is real and when it's not. If at any point you take the other step, you're going to fall off the stage, okay? So I'm trying to make what's called a necessary argument. Can you say that something is and something is not? If you think about it too hard, you might get confused. But just think about it a little bit. Is this here? This is like age 2 months. Maybe they would fail the test, But age 3 months, they're like, it's there. Put the triangle in the little ball. It doesn't fit, It's so funny because today we'd be like, no, it does fit if I think about it hard enough. The problem is this triangle, throw it away, It's ridiculous. This ought to be a square. If it was only a square. Well, we need more grandmas in the world. That's what we need. Seriously. It's like, honey, you're wrong. It is. It is. I can tell something is and something's not. Next step. I can know what something is and what it is not. This is where philosophers have been tripping up. I just want to point this out for the last 400 years. They didn't always trip up, but the last 400 years they've been having a heck of a time with it because a couple smart ones said, wait a second, I'm not sure. And then from then on, they wrote these fancy books that all kinds of people read. And so now you've got a whole bunch of people walking around saying, I'm not sure that I know what a human being is. Who am I? What is a man? You're They're like, well, women have been asking that question for a long time, honey. We still don't know, you know what I mean? But I know this, when I meet somebody, I say, well, there's a man in front of me sticking out his hand. I'm going to shake it, I'm going to smile, and I'm going to move on. If I stop for a second, I'm not sure. What are you? What are you? You know? You'd be insane, folks. The same folks who wrote all those fancy books about philosophy wrote books about philosophy. They were denying that books exist while they were selling them. Now, something's fishy when someone's saying, give me money to tell you that money doesn't exist. Well, just give me more since it doesn't exist, you know? I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. The only truth is that there is no truth. Don't buy it. Let me say that again. There is absolutely no truth except this. There is no truth. I mean, you got to be dumb here after a while. I mean, I bet like a 6-year-old would say, wait a second, Mom. That man doesn't make any sense. Well, he doesn't. That's right. I can know what something is, and I can know what it is not. This is like such a tribute to the American farmer, the American construction worker, the American roofer, the American garbage man, the American soccer referee, the American anybody who's doing something with their life, is that they have to know what a piece of corn is, and what a piece of bean is, and what a barn is, and what a tractor is. And if you walk around a farm saying, I'm not sure that this is a tractor, it looks like it's a car, you're crazy and you're getting in my way. Well, then why would I allow someone to walk around my society saying, I don't know what a woman is, I don't know what a man is? You know what I mean? It's like, well, I mean, what's the matter with you as the answer? I mean, it's one thing to say we're trying to figure out deeper and deeper, but I'm always able to say, that's a woman. Second step, step 3. I can know how to use something and how not to use it. Now, this is a little bit more, you know, of like a big step, because like suddenly you notice we went from things that are kind of simple. It is a tractor. Now, can I use this tractor to mow down my neighbor's barn? Trash it? Yes or no? Well, no, you can't do that. Can I use a tractor to brush my teeth? Brush my wife's teeth? No, that's not what a tractor is for. Now, you're misusing the tractor. Can I use your tractor for an art project? You know, it's like the same thing. You're like, well, if you pay for it, you know, then it's your tractor. You can't use my tractor for an art project. You know, well, I'm just going to spray paint it purple and leave it on the front lawn. Well, you'll pay me for it. You can do what you want with your tractor, but I know what my tractor is for, and it's to make money because I got to pay for the darn thing. Well, okay. I know how to use something. I know how to not use it. My mind is capable of not just saying that this bat exists, and it is a bat, baseball bat, but it's also able to say it's for playing baseball. It's not for hitting people. Well, now let me use the same logic. It is a human body. May I use it to do whatever I want with, to gratify pleasure? The answer, suddenly, I have some. I go back to what is in order to find out why it is. In philosophy, we call it the link between the formal and the final cause. Knowing what a thing is leads me to understanding why a thing is. And the next idea is to say, I need to use a thing as it is supposed to be used. Now suddenly you've got principle. Because you can sit there with someone who says, I think that at age 75...